We now know officially what Donald Trump's closing argument is for the 2018 election, and it is pure, unabashed racism. Here's part of the video he tweeted out yesterday.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please step out into the hallway.
Break up soon? No, kill more.
He says he wants to apply for pardon for the felony he committed, attempt of murder.
It's a video that brings to mind the notorious Willie Horton ad from the '88 campaign.
Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend.
The big difference? That ad was financed by supporters of George H.W. Bush's campaign and later denounced by that campaign. This one comes directly from the president himself, the same president who 3 years ago made this statement.
I am the least racist person that you have ever met.
And then his president went ahead and proved how inclusive he can really be.
Look at my African American over here. Look at him. We have tremendous African American support.
One. And I wonder if that person still supports the president after ads like the one we just showed you and announcements like this one just earlier today.
At this very moment, large, well-organized caravans of migrants are marching toward our southern border. Some people call it an invasion. It's like an invasion. My administration is finalizing a plan to end the rampant abuse of our asylum system. The illegal aliens will no longer get a free pass into our country by lodging meritless claims in seeking asylum. Instead, migrants seeking asylum will have to present themselves lawfully.
Joining me to discuss are Tina Opie. Tina is Associate Professor of Management at Babson College. Tina, good to see you.
Hi,
Lauren Sampson is a fellow at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Great to meet you, Lauren. Thanks for being here. You know, Tina, I was not one of those people who thought the election of Barack Obama ushered in a post-racial era, but I did think it was unlikely that overt racism would take center stage in American politics. On the fringes, yes, center stage. Why was I so wrong?
I think because the election of President Barack Obama perhaps threatens what many people thought the status quo would be in this country. He was a symbol of change and progress. And I think for many people, they felt the pendulum had swung too far. And so we somewhat predicted this reaction that would come up. Because if you look historically, whenever there have been great advances in civil rights, there's usually been sort of the resurgence of the Klan or something of that nature.
Are you surprised that this is rearing its head again, center stage in American politics as it could be?
I'm not surprised. I don't think our organization is either, given the tendrils that have been long evanescent in not only in the rhetoric of the president himself. We all remember that he began his political career claiming that Barack Obama was not born in the United States, but in the murmurings surrounding immigration and Central Americans that have been going on for years. This Trump is the representation, but he's not the beginning.
Well, you know, maybe more important than whether you're surprised or why I was wrong is, will it work? I mean, he's essentially in changing the conversation from family separation to invasion, to use the word, as he said, some people are invaded. Will this work in midterm elections?
And what we've seen is that the president's words do have an effect. We've seen the president embolden the worst elements of our society, not just in famous incidents like in Philadelphia, but only yesterday a bathroom at a South Boston school was graffitied with a racial epithet against African Americans. And if you embolden a populace to take these kinds of actions, what follows?
So does it work, though, when people go in the... There was a line I just printed out from the New York Times, I think today, a generational break of the Republicanism among educated, wealthier whites, especially women, who generally like the party's pro-business policies but recoil from strident, divisive language on race and gender. Are they right? Or, I mean, no denying the incidents that we're talking about, but in broad electoral terms, will this work on Tuesday?
Well, so I think the New York Times could be right. I think we have seen a split in terms of support amongst people who have historically been Republican breaking. I mean, I think we call it what the suburban moms, the soccer moms, for example, down in Georgia, they are breaking for the Democratic Party. But it's possible.
Oprah doesn't hurt either.
I know. I'm not. You know, I'm not mad at you, Oprah. Go get it, girl. Call me. No, I'm just kidding. But I would say that the reason why this terminology, this kind of rhetoric works, we've seen it generation after generation after generation, is because I do think it speaks to implicit fear that certain people have. They want to other others because that makes them feel like this country is theirs, that they're safe, that they're protected. And so when you put out these dog whistles, I do think it can work.
But is it going to peel off these, particularly these women that the New York Times thought? The polls do show that women, as suggest here, who voted for Trump, like his pro-business policies, have been willing to ignore a lot of crap, are not willing to ignore it anymore. Do you buy that or no?
I think it will depend. I think in the 2016 election, we saw Republicans ultimately coming home. Folks who said for months that this was going to be a turnoff, then ultimately nonetheless voting with the party.
You know what I understand, though? Clearly it's not working in parts of the country. I naively, again, assumed there were going to be some cadre of Republicans who are going to say this is just too much. And if you take away Jeff Flake, who's not running for re-election, John Kasich, who knows what he's doing. I mean, he's no longer, running for governor of Ohio. He may run for president. There are virtually no Republicans who are saying this is too much. It's one thing to stop illegal immigration at the border. It's another thing to do a Willie Horton. By the way, it's not. Am I going too far saying this is Willie Horton redux?
No,
30 years later?
I think it's the same thing. I think it's definitely in parallel, and some people may disagree with that. However, when you look at the language and the narrative and the rhetoric that is around it, they're trying to strike the same chord. And what I would say about some of the Republicans who may say this is not enough, I think we have to remember that they have a value structure where the appointment of the Supreme Court judge or anti-abortion viewpoints are superior or in their mind or take precedent over some of these other issues. So they're thinking about perhaps cultural level norms that they'd like to see continued, and they believe that the current president is moving in a positive way.
So you get Kavanaugh so you can't call out racism? Is that the notion? You're either in 100% or you're not in at all?
Well, if you vote against him, then who do you usher in? Somebody who would be anti-Kavanaugh, for example.
Can we talk about the future for a second? Chuck Todd from Meet the Press was on the radio with us today, and he commented on the current situation, and then he talked a little bit about the future. Here's Chuck.
He is doubling down on who he is. He's not pretending to be anything he hasn't been. I think the country's character's on the ballot Tuesday. I'm not 100% convinced which way the country's going to go when it comes to this character gut check.
Which way is the country going to go? I mean, we can go back and forth on November 6th, but it seems to me whether this works or not, it's still in the air. What happens with this kind of rhetoric and these kinds of actions come November 7th and beyond?
I think we are here today a few weeks away from Thanksgiving, a moment in which Americans celebrate folks who came to this country because of persecution and sought to build new lives here. We now also have the President of the United States calling a group of people from Central America seeking to do the exact thing, an invasion. We have the President referring to an undocumented person who committed a crime as harming our people. We essentially have a choice here between, are immigrants part of the American story and the American future, or are they never going to be our people?
But even if even if the American people choose our people, that we're all this, we only have a minute left, this doesn't disappear on November 7th. Trump doesn't change his stripes, even if those stripes didn't produce a victory on November 6th.
No, I agree with Chuck Todd. He is showing more of who he is. And by the way, we're about to celebrate Thanksgiving. I think indigenous people would have a different recollection and narrative about what Thanksgiving actually represents and who invaded whom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course. And this is, I mean more to speak to the double standard that the president is embodying in sort of speaking to when America was great without recognizing the story of that country, a story built on the backs of everything from slavery and the raping of indigenous people's land to denying the fact of the centrality of immigration to our story.
It's great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Hope we're all wrong. Nice to see you.
Thank
Good
you
to
very
meet you.
much.
Appreciate it. Tina Opie, Lauren Sampson, thanks. Again, Election Day is this coming Tuesday, November 6th. Early voting is going on as we speak through tomorrow in Massachusetts. For more information about where to vote in your city or town, visit massearlyvote.com. And if you're still trying to make decisions before you cast your ballot, please be sure to check out our series of debates here on Greater Boston for Governor, Secretary of State, Question 1 on nurse staffing, Question 3 on transgender protection laws, and more. You can find every one of them online, all in one place at wgbh.org/debates.